Shut up and sit down.
Welcome to the Answers Yes podcast, where we will explore the cause and effect of just saying yes in your everyday life or in business. I will dig into topics that are not just stimulating, but will challenge you to be better in everything you do. The podcast is based on the simplicity of saying yes to opportunities you might encounter every single day. I'm your host, Jim Riley. Join me in my first series titled Blue Collar Redefined. Hello and welcome to the Answers Yes podcast. This is another great week. It's cold outside in California, but it is sunny. We've got some little bit of snow on the mountains. It's not often I get people inside of the studio, and it's certainly a pleasure to be able to do that because the sound quality is better, the eye contact's better. We can have a little bit more fun with it. So today I've got a friend that I met through business, and you run into those people in life that you realize real quick that they're going to be friends instead of business partners. And although the business is always good, it's better to meet good people and learn about them and their lives and the things that you might have similar to them. So encourage you to always be open and to receiving friendship, and you never know who you might meet. Today I've got John Solomon in the room, in the studio. John, good morning.
Good morning. How are you, Jim?
I'm good. Thanks for making the trip over here. 10 minutes?
It was a quick trip. And no rain. Beautiful sunny day. A little crisp, but yeah, it is a sunny day in California.
We are so fortunate here. The way that the weather comes and goes. It was snowing yesterday locally here, 10 minutes away, and here we are in sunny, beautiful weather. I don't know. Too bad for the East Coast.
And the snow-capped mountains we get to look at. Not bad view.
Phenomenal. I know weather's always a backup discussion for people to kill conversation time, but man, we're pretty lucky here. I hate to rub that in, but
Absolutely we are.
So I met you in business, as I just suggested, but we kind of hit it off on our fishing trip and knew that we had a lot of things in common. And I was excited to interview you because I think you just have a phenomenal background in business.
Well, thank you. Yeah, the feeling is mutual. Listen, there's nothing bad that ever comes out of fishing. So being out in the ocean, the Pacific, catching fish is always fun.
Yeah, I think we got skunked that day, though.
But we had fun. See what I mean?
Yeah. Absolutely.
It's always good something comes out of fishing.
Absolutely had fun. For the purpose of today's show, I know the business that you're in now. You have a very successful liquor store. Is that liquor store and then online business?
Exactly. Yeah.
You sell beer, wine, and spirits. Cigars. You got cigars.
And cigars. We have cigars.
A little cigar in there. But I know that it was a lot of work to get there. And, it's easy for us to look at somebody and go, wow, this guy's, overnight success or he's got it all. But it's the hard work that I'm interested in hearing about. And for you to have the kind of passion and drive to put that hard work into where you're at today, that's what I really want to talk about today, because a lot of it I don't know, and I think there would be a tremendous amount of value to our listeners. So if you don't mind, could you take us back as far as you're comfortable and maybe tell us what your early influencers were in life and how you became the personality to be an entrepreneur?
Absolutely. Yeah, it's you can go back pretty far, but I would say, at a young age, I had a great work ethic built into me by both my parents, my grandparents. My grandparents being immigrants, they worked their entire lives. It was just that mentality that you had to work hard, mm-hmm. right? I started at a young age living in Detroit, Michigan, and my parents were lower middle class, and we didn't have a whole lot of free money to throw out there. So if I needed something extra or wanted something extra, you had to work for it. And, I had the obligatory paper route, getting up at
I was going to ask.
5 in the morning. Oh, yeah, listen, it's hard to find people that are successful that didn't have some type of early age job at some point, but had the paper route, shoveled snow, made a lot of money. Snow days were cash money for me.
Yeah.
Because I was working all day. Cut grass, I cleaned gutters, I did everything, painted buildings, whatever you could do to make some extra money, I did.
At what age did you start doing these types of jobs?
No kidding. It was probably 11 to 12 when I really started, and I've never not worked. I've worked my entire life, some way, shape, or form since then, and grateful to be able to do so.
Yeah. Now, I'm going to take a pause on this topic for a second. I know you've got some great kids. You spend a lot of time with them. The paper routes are gone. You know, you don't
Right.
that opportunity doesn't really exist anymore. What did you encourage your kids to do, or how did you raise them to have some of those same characteristics that you have? Because my kids are young, but 5 years from now they're going to be in that age range. And I want to make sure I'm doing it right. What's the message to parents that are listening with kids that are coming upon that?
So, and you know, I shared with you my philosophy on the giving to kids, because we are in a little different situation where we're giving kids allowances now, and you're afraid to give them a job, you know, and let them go out on the streets at 12 or 13 years old. But look, my daughters started having lemonade stands when they were young, just to get out there and try and generate some income. They worked through high school. They worked in college. They're all still working. And part of, as I said early on, giving them allowances was, hey, look, I'm going to give you this money, but here's what we're going to do with it. We're going to put a little bit for you to spend, a little bit for you to save, and a little bit for you to give away. And that was big for us. You know, as my wife and I were fortunate that we always wanted to give back. And the holidays were always a time we'd find a local orphanage or home, Hillview Acres in Chino, that used to be based there in Orange County, I think now. And we'd go out, and the kids would go out, and they'd have to go to Toys R Us and buy gifts at Christmas to give away. And that was something that we tried to instill with them, that there are children, there are people, families that don't have what we have. And we lived in a affluent community, so they weren't witness to all of those things. So we kind of had to instill it in them at a young age, and that's something that I've lived my whole life trying to do, is teach my children philanthropy. And we'll talk about that in a little bit if you'd like.
Yeah, absolutely. So right now, the dollars that they're spending on others are their allowance dollars. So you're giving them the money, but you're teaching them how to spend it based on kind of your principles and thoughts as a parent.
Yeah, and obviously they're older now and earning their own money, but you know, still the same.
Yeah.
Save, spend, and give away.
Yeah. That's great. You've heard on the show that I've used that line. I've talked about that before, because I think it's so important, and it's a great way to raise your kids and influence, you know, their thought process, or at least give them some foundation to think about.
Absolutely.
So, I didn't mean to divert from your story there, but I did want to hear how you're raising your kids. You know, we've got a lot of listeners. There's several I can think of that have kids that are almost in that 11, 12, 13-year-old age range. And like myself and you and many others, we all had paper routes.
Right. Oh, absolutely. So I elevated myself from a paper route, and I started working at the local liquor store. And I was probably maybe 13 or 14 when I started, and, you know, bagging ice and carrying out goods and for customers, and they did deliveries. I'd go right along. Anyway, so the owner's son and I kind of hit it off, became friends. He was about 4 or 5 years older than me, and I watched him buying some wine like on a pre-sale. It was like the early days of wine pre-sales, and I said, what are you going to do with that wine? He says, well, I'm going to buy it, hold it, and resell it for a higher price. I said, well, how much is it? And I think it was maybe $225, which I was, I think, 14 or 15 at the time. I told my dad, I said, look, I want to buy this case of wine as an investment. And he said, okay, it's your money. Let me do it. And I bought that case of wine, and I held on to it for probably about 25 years. I don't think I ever made a dime on it. I think we ended up drinking most of it. But it was kind of my early entry into, number one, the wine industry.
Yeah.
And investing.
Yeah.
And it was from that experience that I started kind of delving into the liquor store, wine and spirits business. And I gave college a shot. I went for about 6 months, and it just was not for me. I would rather work 24 hours a day than go to school for 2 hours. And it was something I recognized right away.
Yeah. So did you go to college because you thought you wanted to, or did your parents encourage you to go?
I would have been the first in my family to go to college. My dad, you know, finished 8th grade and got his GED. My mom obviously went to high school but no college. It was, you know, my grandparents, again, no college. I mean, they immigrated here when they were 15.
Mm-hmm.
So I would have been the first in my family to go to college. So there was a lot of pressure to go.
Yeah.
So it was a big disappointment when I dropped out, but it was just who I was. And, you know, I realized that my time would be better spent in other places.
Because, and you know, it's interesting that you had that understanding at that age that college wasn't going to do it for you, and like you just said, you'd rather work 24 hours a day than go to school.
Yeah,
I think it's unfortunate that so many students or people stick it out, even though they realize that they would be better doing something else.
they bear themselves in debt to have a degree in something that they don't have any idea what they're going to do with. Unfortunately, a lot of jobs now, and they're starting to change that. I think Google is one of the biggest that is now starting to look at hiring people without a college degree that have real life experience, which is very important.
Yeah. Yeah.
So anyways, from there, I ended up realizing, hey, look, I'm going to go to California for a summer. And this was kind of my first yes. I had an uncle that owned a liquor store out here. And he says, why don't you come work for me for the summer?
Mm-hmm.
I'll pay you a whopping $3.50 an hour. I said, okay. And that included room and board. And I came at the end of the summer. My dad says, hey, when you coming back? I says, I'm not coming back. I'm staying. He goes, well, how are you going to live? And I said, I'll just find a way.
Yeah.
And when I moved out of my aunt and uncle's house, I think I had about $50 in a suitcase full of clothes, and shared a room that was probably half the size of your studio.
Wow.
Yeah, and that's where I lived in La Puente, California, which is, you know, not the idyllic.
It's not Newport.
Exactly, not Newport Beach at all. Anyway, so I lived there. I started working at a store, and this was another yes moment for me. I was working at a store in Arcadia, and it was close to the racetrack, and a lot of guys came in to buy their racing form, and I had just kind of made a habit of kind of like learning all of our customers' names. It was something that my dad, who was a salesperson, kind of taught me. You know, you always call people by the first name.
Yeah.
And it was, for me, it was not so much their first name as, you know, hey, Mr. Smith, and hey, Bill, and you got to know everybody, and this was in a very short period of time. And one of the customers happened to be the sales manager for a local wine and spirits wholesaler.
Mm-hmm.
And he says, hey, kid, you ever think about getting into sales? I said, not really. He goes, well, would you like to get into sales? I said, yes. I said, yes, I will.
Just like that.
And just like that. And, I mean, I think I started probably within about a week of that conversation. And basically, I was 20. I turned 21, like my first month on the job. So they really had, I mean, this is pre-HR, but I wasn't even legally allowed to be a salesman in the wine and spirits industry. But I took the job.
You were close enough.
Right. And my first day, I'm sitting in Huntington Beach. I'm on Beach Boulevard. And the gentleman that's supposed to train me, is supposed to meet me, resigned from the company. So I called my boss. I said, well, what do I do? He goes, well, you've got a route book. He says, you can try and call on the customers, or you can go home until we get another trainer. I said, you know what? I'll give it a shot. I walked into my first account. I think I sold them about 25 cases worth of wine.
Oh, wow.
and I just took off ever since after that. And
yeah.
It was a great year. The company that I was with closed down. I ended up going to another small company that became the largest wine and spirits wholesaler in the United States. Southern Wine and Spirits turned into Southern Glazers, and I was fortunate to be with them for about 10 years. And then I had another yes opportunity. The company was looking to promote me, move me to Santa Barbara, and I wasn't really sure I wanted to move to Santa Barbara and relocate my wife and 2 kids and one on the way. And one of my accounts, which was Liquorama, I'm telling him the story, and he says, you know, why don't you buy my place? And I said, yes, I will.
Just like that.
Just like that. And obviously there were a lot of details. I had no money at the time. You know, he pretty much carried most of the paper. I gave him every penny I had, all of my life savings. And, you know, it's a lot of times, too, you're looking for the yes from me, but I'll give you another important yes was that when I went to my wife to have the conversation, I told her what I wanted to do and what my thoughts were, and this has been a dream of mine to own my own business, and kind of thought maybe it would never happen, but I never ever give up. And I told her, and I said, "What do you think?" She says, "Yes, let's do it." So it wasn't only my yes that made the difference in our lives, but it was my wife's yes.
another great moment to pause and reflect on that, because our spouses and families play such a big role in who we are and what we do. And not only supporting our spouse,